just kind of ability, I think we would certainly see some value in having someone who's able to have this be here in person for meetings and things moving forward. Obviously, we do have capabilities kind of with the technology of being able to be remote much when we have, but that's something that would be for us kind of.
Just out of curiosity, how many put figures first?
The RFP for the services were they've been saying for every few years we get an engagement letter and we're changing everybody's.
Okay.
But our procurement policy like this one, I think, allows us to better.
Okay. Just curious, to Michelle's point, I suspect it's a fairly small pool, but we're going to see percent. So we can hold on more next month.
You said something about not to exceed the amount of budget for this year.
Sure. So this would cover everything. It's a little bit of additional what we would be the end of this year, should we need it based on kind of timing of responses that we get back on third
Let me just clarify calendar year versus fiscal year
calendar year. It's the fiscal year.
for the corporation. So when we say fiscal year 25, we mean calendar year 25. Different notices. So. Okay. All right. So just to be clear, the waiver of competitive bid. So we're reviewing it as the finance/governance committee. Are we expected to vote on it, to recommend it to the board, or what's the?
I don't think that there's, I'm looking at Connor, if you have any procedural,
Outside counsel for.
procedural opinions otherwise, but I'm not sure that there's necessarily anything that requires committee in order for it to be voted on at the board meeting. I think the role of how we're kind of leveraging committee meetings is to just talk through some of the other policy things. It probably couldn't hurt to get a thumbs up now, but I think the more critical thing probably is the board resolution. So however, it makes no sense.
Just we see that, just what I heard there. Okay, okay, all right, so just for the purposes of reporting out to the board, are we all, anyone want to register any significant concern? Councilor Hogan talked about potential conflict, and we need to make sure we run that through. Any other concerns about this approach?
Yeah, in this case, we've already heard this.
It's a matter of choice. So it's an important one. Again, no, I was assuming. Okay, all right, so I think we're comfortable advancing the waiver to board. Let's move on to our budget.
So the second item here is just an amendment of the fiscal year 25 operating budget, adjusting the total dollar amounts for directors, officers, insurance, and liability insurance. So the estimate map that we had, there was about a $175 difference. So we took those charges. If you look on the last page of your packet, the items to the right kind of show what the changes are, but we basically just subtracted the difference from what had been previously budgeted and licenses and fees. What kind of licenses and fees are we think for our fiscal? What's the name of the QuickBooks? Thank you. QuickBooks and stuff like that. So I suspected that might be a little bit of an over budget. I was approximating based on what Center was paying for similar licenses.
I didn't realize we have to have our own.
Separate licenses. So. Other questions or concerns?
Yep. Okay, good. All right. So that was technically under the finance committee and of this joint meeting. So let's talk about governance committee items.
All right, so just wanted to kind of talk through how we've been working to roll out the block challenge program about 3 weeks in now. Reception of the program has been really positive so far. We've had a lot of engagement out at neighborhood meetings. I've had well over 100 phone calls and emails that have been sent into all people that are calling about it. I've had great response at neighborhood meeting turnout. We had an open house last night. Again, it's all free. We have evening. Tip Hill. So kind of trying to do a mix of more formal presentations as well as kind of technical assistance and a few kind of pop-up office hours type things where people could just kind of drop by and help people out with their applications. We have received a total of 4 applications at this point, which include, I think, about 18 properties total, which is really exciting. From a budget standpoint, in terms of where their anticipated scopes are, that does put us about halfway through our amount that is currently budgeted. So I think we'll continue to keep an eye on that based on applications received. I think certainly from a participation standpoint, obviously part of the reason that we're doing the block down program is to kind of check our math in advance of rollout of some of the larger programs. And so I think we would want to minimally ensure that we can accommodate budget-wise everything that we receive through the end of this calendar year. So we'll amend those as needed, but
Are they evenly split over the 2 neighborhoods?
so right now, the applications that have come in, they have all been for Tip Hill, but we're aware of several teams, large teams that are coming in Salt Springs. So I expect that we will continue to be getting those in the coming days. So
And how do we handle, the vision of resources between the neighborhoods? Is it,
there is nothing in terms of our current budgeting that requires us to do anything one way or the other. So I think that's the kind of thing we would continue to monitor. I do expect this based on kind of communication that we've had with different teams, so that they're gonna end up relatively close. But we can kind of adjust.
safe to assume among the committees that our goal will be to make sure that resources are fairly equitably distributed pending demands?
Not 50/50. I think that CCB had recommended specific dollar amounts per neighborhood, so we want to make sure we're at least somewhat in line with their recommendations.
I think their recommendations were more from a budgeting standpoint. What do you expect it is going to cost based on capacity to pay? So I do, and I think some of that kind of comes down to cost share. So I think we'll get into that a little bit more with some of the larger programs. Obviously, this is across the board a 50/50 cost share. I think that there's certainly much room for discussion around some kind of graduated or tiered cost share based on homeowner income, perhaps, that you could put into place where if you're at a certain income, it's 50% match. If you're at a lower income, you get a slightly higher match. So we can kind of continue to work through that, but I think that was where their baselines were coming in. And I actually think that Tip Hill, because of the number of 2 and 3 unit properties that they have there, the math ended up actually being relatively close for CCPs as it was in Salt Springs. So just because of density of units.
Are they all looking, are they all trying to vote for?
So far, a lot of people are, yeah. There's a handful that are some smaller dollar amounts, like just want to get some storm doors or things like that, smaller landscaping, but. Cool.
Good, all right, other updates?
No, I think that kind of covers the updates. I think the remaining items that we have as far as kind of policy clarifications are all things that have just kind of come up in the context of outreach and rollout that we have done to date. So we'll all recall the current stipulations for the program are such that what was reviewed and adopted by the board. We can administratively approve anything that complies with those guidelines. And then in the event that we have situations that do not comply with those guidelines, we need to either bring a waiver or amend the guidelines. So there's a couple of those that I think we did just want to clarify, all for the purposes of things that I think kind of fall. The most critical of them is the line of sight proximity, one, which I think this is really a function of just ensuring efficient turnaround and applicant responsiveness. Obviously, as we talked about at our last board meeting, we are working very hard to ensure that there is a way that everyone can get on the team one way or the other, even if they don't fit line of sight. So the words that are currently in the packet are such that we would just like to amend the words to give administrative discretion for what that means. So in the event that we cannot find a immediate line of sight, we would work to find the next closest neighbor or a sound care. So.
Anything based on our previous conversations, I know there was some concern about the viability of being able to get line of sight every time. So understanding that's the goal and that's the spirit of it. We don't want to unnecessarily exclude otherwise interested participants. So sure I'm comfortable with this discussion. Anything else? Yeah.
Second one is eligibility based on, property occupancy and use. So this, is based out of some inquiries that we've got specific in, Tip Hill. So, understanding there's a little bit more kind of commercial, and adjacent residential uses next to each other. In that particular neighborhood more so than you see in Salt Springs, but, questions as to whether or not a commercial business can participate on a team if they otherwise need line of sight, so they can kind of like stone area, could a business participate on a team of homeowners? I think that as a kind of recommendation, for commercial businesses, I think it's a reasonable thing that we could consider accommodating. Right now, the terms of the program, state that it is limited to residential. So if we were to make an adjustment for it. I think we either need to amend the guidelines or we could, at the point that that application comes in, we anticipate it's coming in the next, couple weeks here, review with that, but.
Yeah, because the guidelines are really good for houses of mine, you know. Do you think it's Florida?
Stone or one of the adjacent bars further down the street, I think, Wheeler's was one that was
It's
asked.
tucked in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Park in the neighborhood.
Exactly,
It's a great spot for their rack parking, right, well done with the.
yeah. Yeah,
What did you say, Karen?
Any and a curb appeal. Yeah, commercial.
I'm just concerned. It's a beginning, different direction. Really
Slippery slope.
slippery slope, and the commercial application could be for more money than a typical residential. I don't know if I agree with making it eligible. Commercial.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily.
Because they have housing as part of it, it's a mixed use, yeah. It's not a mixed use, purely commercial, like Barney Stones.
Well, interestingly,
I don't think
the
it's,
Barney Stone would be mixed use.
Well, not
You have a
anymore.
market on top, right?
Well, not anymore,
Yeah.
it's Sandoval.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they got, so I mean, they're totally, I agree, and this will be the first, I agree with you on the second, I think the commercial, I don't know, it's silver slope unless it's a.
Oh, it's gonna make it easier to answer the second question about
Yeah,
churches, and religious uses.
What's the source of these funds? Yeah.
city, running through SURA. So I think the way that the language within SURA is written is such that it does allow kind of the blight or vulnerability to blight if left unattended. I think applies from kind of a whole block, whole area,
But it means the ability where the funds come from. The fund is for
city dollars, city SURA.
yeah. There's so many stipulations on religious side, right? Just can't.
That's part of the reason why I think that's a kind of a non-starter either way. I also think that there's, we looked at the number of possible cases. It's like 10 out of 5. So.
I think church are concerned.
I think you're also going to get into a discussion of what's commercial and what's not. It gets crazy.
I mean, there isn't anything to say that at some point in the future, we couldn't establish a commercial program, right?
Right, and I think that that was something we had kind of contemplated, just based on, similar structures. We CSM, some of their work. I think we just for the purposes of time and efficiency, didn't carve it out as a separate program, so that we could kind of focus on this. So, again, I think even if you think about the overall numbers of commercial businesses, particularly in the two neighborhoods that we're focused on right now, it is a relatively limited number of cases in which we're gonna see a lot of these. Certainly, there could be some on, West Genesee Street, but, from a kind of adjacent residential, commercial teams that are working together, I don't know that it's going to be a ton of instances in these two neighborhoods.
But again, it's a precedent to say yes to one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's a, you know, which folder and say, please, unless you see, it's got, upstairs, use them by ours.
Yeah, next use, I have no problem.
Well, I just. It's a standard residential.
I personally, in the case of the commercial businesses, if you are a commercial business that is otherwise participating on a team of surrounding residential structures, I think that there could be some value add to that in terms of business relationship with the adjacent homeowners. I think particularly in the case that we're kind of thinking of here, like having some of those neighbor connections is probably a good thing. But I also understand kind of the precedent setting and, from that angle of it, and I think that we could just as easily address it through kind of a separate scope.
And the rest of the team of residences would have to welcome them into their team.
Correct, yeah. I think in terms of kind of dollar amounts, we would not change any other rules. They would have to comply with all the same other kind of adjacent line of sight and things of that nature, but.
And I think you might be on something there, you know, that in Eastwood, a lot of the local businesses support the activities that the neighborhood association does, and it's good to build those relationships.
They're looking at that structure.
Yeah,
We're around it, people that are walking by it.
Stafford, for example.
Yeah.
Does a nice job of maintaining their storefront, it's like, make improvements, sort of thing.
I like the mayor's comment about maybe a future program, you know, you go to Eastwood especially. I can see some of the public saying, oh geez, this was a housing program, and now look at this. And yeah. Like, from these funds, it's just.
Do we need to vote on this, or what's going on?
So at this point, that application, I think they were looking to assemble their team. It has not yet been received, so we don't have to, I think what we were trying to do is just be efficient and kind of responsiveness to answering the question. So I think we can kind of send in that guidance accordingly.
It's a solid, we have
Consensus.
consensus here.
So you don't want to bring that one to us, say it doesn't respond to the guidelines that are.
I would say if it is currently a split vote, then yes. If it were to be a kind of hard no from everyone right now, across the board, then
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know, if John or Counselor, if you want to double down, on your opposition, I mean, I can see both sides of it. I do think that, you know, mixed use, I think is easier, but, you know, if we had as an example, two homeowners that, wanted to do something with their neighborhood establishment on the corner, I think would be generally comfortable with that, but I understand about the precedent. So, you know, we can certainly keep open the possibility and revisit as a board, but I think that the preference is to do residential, but have a little bit perhaps on the perspectives.
Michelle, is the applications from like Avery?
Avery, I think, was the folks that were looking to put an application together.
Yeah,
They had
I mean, there used to be a living space above there. I don't.
Yeah, and so I think kind of, I guess we have also had questions about mixed use and with any residential structures. If there's apartments upstairs, I think from a staff perspective, we were considering that to have a sufficient residential component that I was not necessarily going to ask for a deviation, but if it turns out that folks feel strongly otherwise, we can rethink that.
Yeah, I'm okay. with action.
Right, yeah.
Just that space.
Yeah, no, and I think as it's contemplated here, I was speaking kind of strictly commercial only. So, okay, I think we can table for now. Yep. All right, that works. Okay, so this one, is a question that was kind of raised. I think in general, there's a lot of, people that are kind of trying to figure out, they, have quite a bit of work that they want to do, and they are trying to figure out how they might be able to most appropriately pace their 3 participations over a 5-year period, to be able to kind of maximize work that they're able to get done. So I think the way that the question was raised originally is an easy answer. I think what the actual question had been was, can I, if I wanna do like my siding, it's gonna cost 10 grand, can I just do half now, half later? I think that's a pretty straightforward, no, you cannot do that. You do need to do all of the work of a given kind of scope of work at once, in that scenario, but it does beg the question, of, is there a way in which we could consider, if you're going to take some investment above and beyond in one component now and allow for subsequent participation for new projects? If you're already going through the process to kind of get those expenses documented, is there a way in which we can accommodate, easily from an administrative standpoint, and is the board comfortable with us kind of considering any extra cost that you're incurring above your 5,000 to go towards a future match in a different route for a different component? In terms of kind of overall dollar amounts, I think, it doesn't change the total amount that the board would actually be contributing in any way, shape, or form. And if anything, it does, incentivize people to do a little bit more work than they might otherwise do. So,
Description.
oh, okay, we're coming back down, sorry, thank you. Good with that one, all right.
Sounds like what we do payment, but.
Yeah, I think it's gonna make things easier administratively, but.
Right.
Yeah,
But I think it doesn't sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, they do have to turn in receipts, and so I think from a kind of case file management standpoint, I feel comfortable with how we're planning to kind of keep people's packets together. I think we should be able to check it, easily enough, so. Since I did accidentally skip shared driveway, it's gonna make a little bit more sense if we go down towards substantial homeowner rental rehabs just for a moment, because it's effectively the same concept. So, this is kind of coming from, had multiple, people that have inquired about kind of substantial home renovations that they want to do. People that have been a part of the steering committee meetings and kind of understand the fact that when we get to the larger programs, we're going to be kind of likely starting in some smaller subclusters of the neighborhood. We're not necessarily going to go the full spread of the neighborhood from day one, like we are with this program. So they have projects teed up, they're ready to go, and they want to know, if I do work now, can I use that in some way to kind of get credit for future projects that I might want to do when you get to my neighborhood? I think, again, kind of in a similar vein, there's no reason for us to delay people who want to invest in their properties. I do think that with the larger programs, it does kind of open up a slightly different can of worms, understanding that we don't have all of the terms of that program fleshed out yet. So I think what we're asking at this point is just a little bit more of a temperature check from people about how we might give people guidance kind of in the interim. I think we would be looking, if the board felt like that's kind of a reasonable concept, I think the guidance that we would give in response to that is a most likely yes, but tread cautiously at your own risk, where there is no way that.
Like you'd have to have something that actually says this in no way guarantees.
Correct, yeah, so basically, we would have them kind of submit a proposed scope, we would kind of spell out. Yeah, absolutely, so.
Clearly not going back to work on.
Correct, it would be just from, I would say, July 2025 to the future. I would also suggest that we would even put in kind of like a 3-year forward timeline on it of like, if we are actually gonna get to you for 7 years.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So I'm in one of those neighborhoods. At this very moment in time, contemplating placing my roof. I'm anticipating based on the conversations that there will be some program that may be supportive of that type of. I reach out and share that information with you and say, hey, I would love for this investment to be counted towards some future match or some future. I getting that right, and then we would put something in writing and say, not a guarantee, but based on our understanding of your scope of work, your anticipated timeframe, will be eligible for to use that as matching funds for future.
Yeah, so if you come back in 3 years and say, now I want to do my kitchen and basement.
Yeah, because I actually did hear from a constituent, that very case, they have big projects that they're about to pull the trigger on, and they're debating, what do they wait, a lot of ways, but clearly they're being encouraged, they're feeling encouraged to make that investment based on what we're doing, so,
which is exactly what we want, I
Right.
think, at the end of the day, so.
yeah.
So I'm confused. And my statement is always, so somebody puts in money for a smaller project, given credibility to go later on or something like that.
This would be for kind of bigger projects that people would be looking to do, I think if anyone has a smaller,
Investment,
like I wanna do a roof, I wanna do a full exterior
for sure.
situation. We've had one person that said that they wanna do a full gut rehab, they have like $115,000 worth of work that they wanna do. So if they get started on some of that now,
Oh, I see.
when
So
they come back to
they're-
do the second half of it,
Second half of it.
Yeah.
then they can go.
right?
Okay.
So I think people are also kind of trying to anticipate a little bit just the nature of the contracting environment. It takes a while if you're doing that kind of large of a work to kind of get in the pipeline, so.
But they don't know, and we don't necessarily know where the narrower geographic area is gonna be, that we're focusing this next. round.
Correct, and so that's where number one, it's anyone that would be pursuing this as an option would be very clear that this is a tread cautiously kind of at your own risk. I do think we can make some calculated guesses, so I think we would certainly steer anyone who we know is really far out of the ballpark of this from pursuing that at this exact time, so that would be kind of, you would need to come directly through us for us to kind of review scope and make sure we're not setting anyone down the wrong path.
And then you talk to you in advance.
Yes, yeah, we would need to clear their scope and, I think want to set kind of the basic, parameters of at minimum, it's expected that you're pulling permits. I think the combination of kind of total development cost on your permits as well as your receipts that you're keeping, that is how we will then substantiate match that was incurred, so. We don't have receipts down the road, there's no way that we can prove your match occurred, so.
Let's just communicate the permit price for standard.
They should not do the project if they're only doing it with the hopes of getting.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
more so the example, like, people are excited, they want to make the investment, but they want to get some credit for it if something comes along. Sure, they're gonna do it.
So,
It's a bet. It is, yes. But in some ways, it's investing in your property for living. Yeah.
so it sounds like what we're hearing is people are comfortable with us taking that provision in as we finalize.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Going back to the reimbursement maximums for a shared project component. So, this is one where, we have a team of folks in Tickville that have a shared driveway between the two of them. They are essentially asking to, whether the driveway itself is that considered one reimbursement or two separate reimbursements. And so I think we're bringing this to you all, just understanding kind of from an auditing standpoint, need some type of clear justification and provision, I think, kind of to point back to in some way, of like, if we were to allow them to both claim some type of credit for this, you know, just substantiate that we weren't paying twice for the same work, basically. I think what we would kind of propose as handling the scenario, is the way that that I look at it is if we had two neighbors who just had their own driveways that were to apply for this program and each get their own driveways done, we wouldn't think much of that. We would allow that is fine. So, in this case, I think what we would maybe just ask to ensure that they're kind of still meeting the same participation threshold, if you would, as, other teams would be that they would either add another participant to their team so that we're getting enough additional participants, or that they would, or that they would also pursue another project component besides just the driveway.
I don't have a problem with it, just as an anecdote. My business is one of the biggest problems we have with shared driveways, is nobody has an equal shared driveway agreement. It is a nightmare. Absolutely, it's real closes. So I would have a component in there that if this is truly a shared driveway as opposed to two abutting driveways, that it would be required to have a legal shared driveway agreement signed by the property owners. That would be it's public.
It's a great idea. We could have our attorneys here with a template.
But it should be needed.
Or,
That would help.
yeah.
And I think in this case, the people that aren't required by the state. So, that seems helpful, but
That could encourage people. I mean, which will help them along.
But yeah, it's great.
right. Policies. I think, only other item that we had on our agenda today, just wanted to kind of go through what the timeline looks like for putting together additional programs. I think, obviously, we're in August at this point, so, management has a rollout of the Block Challenge program. I think it's what we have been communicating to residents at all of our outreach and engagement is that they can expect that we will be opening applications for programs in early 2026. So I think just, in order to kind of pace that out, make sure that we've gone through all the legal reviews, get to a place where the board feels fully comfortable with terms. I think we're kind of expecting that, we're gonna need between now and, January. By the end of January, we would look to kind of have terms rolled out, to be able to go live with some applications in February. Which would then kind of set people up well to be able to pursue projects that they might be looking to do kind of come spring. I think we are suggesting that we would kind of break out into two chunks, kind of focus on one package of parameters that is for any owner occupants as one set, and then a kind of second layer of any substantial rental rehabs for any property owners that are already owning an existing property as a rental. So wouldn't necessarily allow for any kind of purchase acquisition at this stage. But if you are an existing landlord, whatever investments you want to make. I think what our takeaway from kind of some of the block challenge rollout is, I do think that it would be advantageous for us to get to kind of like a mostly baked, or 3/4 of the way baked, a set of provisions to shop around to residents, kind of in the context of some focus groups. So I think what we would want to do within the next 2 months is bring forward templates for what those programs might look like to kind of run by the board. I think I would approach this exercise from kind of the goal of it is to get a temperature check of where people are feeling at about different provisions within them. I would say anything that is gonna take more than 10 minutes worth of discussion is kind of an automatic table and use that as a kind of focus group and additional consideration item that we work through. But we get it, a baseline set of provisions that people feel comfortable with to give us enough to shop around to the residents. We can then continue to work through any kind of loose ends, that we use, all that good stuff, kind of towards the end of the year. And then any final last meeting, I just want to have nicely about that kind of by January, so we can go live. Great.
Like, it's good to kind of again, single family developers, maybe rename that to just new residential development. Well, people might want to do townhouses. What about ADUs?
That sounds great, yeah. I think we could also consider ADUs under renovation.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, unfortunately, using, we're not getting a lot.
Correct. I've had a conversation with this with a few residents that I think part of the reason we're not getting a lot of traction on it is just that the math doesn't map. But I think if we're able to bring some additional resources to mayor to help pursue that, that would be great. I do think that we are looking to see if we can also, assuming that there's another round of state funds for the ADU dollars, I think we would look to pursue additional resources through that, through the city. So that we can also maybe try to pair some of those resources.
The state has a specific program for ADUs.
Yeah, yes.
That's it.
Yeah. And
Is it funded?
yes, they've done 3 new rounds of it so far. I think when it was first flagged for us, when we became aware of it, when the proposal review, we just weren't able to kind of make it work. But I think at this point, if they're going to do some smart round, which it sounded like from the last, update that I heard, our state partners should be moved towards the first of the year. That will be good for some countries, right? Any other questions or concerns that anyone else raised?
I will, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ben? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
You know, Mayor, I wanted to say one thing. I want to commend the team.
Yep.
To reach out to, I mean, you guys have been very helpful.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
These days, we met my grandson. That helped me beat. He's got some health issues going on, so we're homeschool with this.
If you.
I will let my.
See you come home.
Bringing ice and paper.
Okay, great, please do. How old is he?
Bring up the
Yeah, sure. Yeah.